If you don't have the right leadership, you're not going to get the culture you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's simple to say and hard to do.
Welcome back to Beyond the Ping Pong Table, where we dive deep into the innovative workplace cultures that prioritize people. I'm your host, Farron Tabrizi, and today we're joined by a seasoned leader who brings 4 decades of experience to the table. Mike Butler is not just a business owner, but a transformative force, having led and successfully reshaped various enterprises. In his extensive journey, Mike has unearthed profound truths about leadership, emphasizing the delicate balance of courage and humility required for success. Perhaps even more compelling is his realization that the heartbeat of achievement lies in cultivating a vibrant workplace culture. Mike is passionate about sharing his insights to help others flourish, both as businesses and individuals. Welcome, Mike Butler.
Oh, thank you, Farron. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I really appreciate it.
All right. So one question I've been having kind of fun with as an icebreaker is, could you tell me your first job?
Oh, okay. Uh, my first job was counting worms in a worm farm in Sacramento, California for a summer in excess of 100-degree weather.
Wow.
Yes,
All right.
could
And
top that one.
that is, we've had a couple like ice cream scoopers that were funny. Yeah, that's probably the most original I've heard yet. And how old were you
Well,
when you were doing that?
I think I was 14 or 15. I
Nice.
had to ride my bike to get there and that type of stuff. It's the traditional story. I had to ride my bike 5 miles every
Right?
morning to go to work. Uh, but yeah, my second job was scooping ice cream at Baskin
No
Robbins.
kidding.
It was a little cleaner environment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's great. So did you grow up in Sacramento? Is that
I did, yes.
okay? Okay, cool. Not far.
Yeah. I've been in Denver since I think about 85 or 86.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so um from counting worms, how did that lead you to where you are today? Can you give us a little bit about the path that you've taken before starting your current business?
Sure. Basically worked all through high school and worked myself through college, paid for my own college education and majored in business and uh, finance and insurance. Actually, where I went to school had a focus on insurance, so I did that too. And when I got out of college, I immediately got hired by an insurance company on the underwriting side, commercial insurance. So I started, the corporate life.
Yeah.
I moved from Sacramento to San Antonio to Baltimore, back to Sacramento to Denver, all in 8 years, climbing the corporate ladder, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And really learning um, ice age leadership skills, the stuff that is so inappropriate today. Uh, but I was effective at that, and along the way, there's a lot of success, but a lot of bodies lying around too.
Mm.
And when I got to Denver, I left the insurance company side and bought into an insurance brokerage firm, and that was what I've been doing for the till I retired, is owning, running, and leading commercial insurance brokerage firms.
Okay.
And that's where I also started becoming a student of leadership uh, after my corporate experience, because I saw that there could be a better way. I didn't really know what it was, but I knew what I had experienced,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so that led me on a journey of becoming a student of leadership, and I've spent the last 30 years focusing on that. And uh, when I retired, I wanted to give back. And, in the companies I've run, I've always identified future leaders and helped them, coach them, mentor them using real business, what was happening in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just continued that after I retired and started working with executives and coaching, and that kind of blossomed because the pandemic hit, and it just changed really it changed the world. It changed
Mhm.
how we do business, and gave me an opportunity to really focus on helping leaders and executive teams. And my business grew to the point where I added a partner. And so I have a business partner, Aaliyah Horseman, who you've met. I think
Mhm.
she was your first introduction to us.
Right. That's right.
And so, yeah, we've been focusing on helping business owners be really effective leaders and building the cultures that they want, not the cultures that they have. That's 40 years right there.
Yeah. Wow. In a nutshell. So that's the executive guide, your company, the executive
Yes.
guide.
Uh-huh.
Great. And what kind of businesses do you work with? Do they span a wide range, or are they?
Yeah, it's a great question. And people ask us that often. Uh, we don't specialize in any industry.
Okay.
And actually, it's really fun to work with a diverse group of clients because uh, we get a real feel and flavor for the diversity of the challenges that they face
Mm-hmm.
from a business standpoint, but from a leadership and cultural standpoint, there is no difference. Whether it's a commercial HVAC company or a professional engineering firm or a wealth management firm,
Mm-hmm.
all of the challenges they face from leadership and cultural uh, development they're the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
It's
just kind of
people,
fun to
right?
yeah, it's people. That's what I say. It's well, if there's people involved, we can help them.
Yeah, absolutely. When did you feel it was your calling to help other businesses and leaders?
Well, as I mentioned during my career, I always identified people that I wanted to help, that I thought had a path beyond what they could see.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, when I retired, I I still was, fairly young and had a lot of energy. And actually, my wife and I wanted to start traveling to
Mm-hmm.
kind of make up for me being a workaholic. You know, that
Mm-hmm.
life balance stuff that we
Oh
talk
yeah.
about now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have that. Uh, so what happened was I said, well, what can I do part time that would still allow us to travel?
Mm-hmm.
And I started exploring and talking to friends of mine and peers and business associates, and it came down to the path of coaching CEOs and business owners and
Mm-hmm.
executive teams. And well, what happened was the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
and so no travel.
Right.
We weren't able to travel,
Back
so
to
that
work.
just meant, oh, my part-time job just turned into a full-time job.
Right. Right. Okay. So, what are some of the common challenges that business owners and leaders face, and in understanding their strengths and their weaknesses within their business?
Yeah, the answer to that question is could take hours and hours.
Mm-hmm.
But to just sum it up in a nutshell, uh, the businesses that we work with are in different stages of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so you have your startups and your early entry companies that their own unique set of challenges, uh, and then you have companies that are more mature and they're growing, and the founder uh, is getting to a plateau. They're actually hitting a ceiling.
Yeah.
They're not growing at the pace they want to be. They're working harder than they want to be. They're not making any more money, and they're losing talent.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is those leaders that have the self-awareness to say, okay, I know what the problem is. It's me.
Mm-hmm.
I either need to sell, I either need to bring in a leader to take it where I can't, or
Mm-hmm.
I need to hire a firm like the Executive Guide.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the companies we work with. We only work with companies where the leader is self-aware, because you cannot build a culture, you cannot build a cohesive leadership team if the leader is not self-aware
Yeah.
and not humble. And so right there are some of for us, the things we look for on the type of clients that we want to engage with. And even when they are self-aware, there's still a challenge. Ego plays a big part of it. I
Sure.
founded this business. Made all these decisions. I've been doing good so far. And uh, so it's challenging when we come in to do our work because Sometimes we work just with the CEO and coaching the CEO because many leaders, they never went to school to become a leader, so to speak. They never went to CEO school. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to really act and behave like a leader. And we help them with that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but that often leads to, okay, we need to be working with your executive team too. And so
Mm-hmm.
we'll embed ourselves in our clients' executive teams and be in their meetings twice a month for 3 hours working on the leadership team. And that creates a whole nother dynamic because maybe some of those leaders don't want to be vulnerable.
Right.
All right. So we have to work through that, right? Because again, I'm talking about leadership and culture at the same time because you
Yeah.
cannot have a leadership team that isn't open, vulnerable, clear about their values, model their behaviors. If they're not all in alignment on that, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to get the culture that you think you want.
Yeah.
And so that's we spend quite a bit of time in that area, and then that leads to the third area of actually helping them craft what they need to do, when, how, who, in building their culture. They have to be able to clearly articulate. You've heard, for decades, mission and vision, mission and vision.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those statements hang on a wall, and not a single employee or executive team member can recite what their mission or vision is.
Right.
They're not helpful. And
Right.
so we crafted and we create a clarity. We help our clients create a clarity statement. It's simply one piece of paper. And it just says, who are we? Why do we exist?
Mm-hmm.
How are we different?
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going? What are the values that guide our behaviors?
Mm-hmm.
And that simple document, which is really, we used a lot of Patrick Lencioni's work. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he wrote Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and
Oh
he's
yeah.
a very
It's a great book.
famous leader.
Mm-hmm.
We use a lot of his work
Mm-hmm.
in developing that document, and that helps the leadership team. It's a roadmap, and it helps them hold accountable. So we use that to really guide the culture development. And then the fourth thing that almost always leads to is, you'd be surprised, you're probably not surprised, how few businesses actually plan. They actually take a day off-site and do
Yeah.
planning.
Right.
Very few.
Yeah.
And they're too busy. They're too busy. We're too busy to take 8 hours to plan, so we'll spend enormous amount of money and waste and time, labor, because we won't take that day to invest. And
Mm-hmm.
so we really show our clients that investing a day every quarter for planning is really helpful for them. And we limit it to 12 12 months. Everybody, you hear, oh, we need a 3 and 5 year plan. Most businesses today are moving too fast. There's the the environment's changing too much. A 3 year plan is useless.
Yeah.
So we help them just, how are you going to get through the next year?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you can get them on a cadence of that, like we have a client right now, we've done that with, okay, now we're going to spend a 2 days on a 3 year plan. All right. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just useless to do that with most businesses in today's environment. So those are the four things we do
Mm-hmm.
at the executive guide.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So you emphasize the importance of culture in determining success. How do you identify and reinforce core values within an organization?
yeah, it's great question. It's really how we behave, and it starts at the leadership level. How do the leaders behave?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we often, when we start with a client, they'll say, "Do you want to see our financials? Do you want to see our, SOPs?" And we're like, "No, we just want to come in and sit in one of your leadership meetings."
Mm-hmm.
And we watch and observe how the leaders behave,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, how does that align with what they say they want as an organization. And almost always, they're out of alignment. Almost always. Uh, and there's questions we ask. Do you ever leave a meeting and talk about the meeting after the meeting? Oh yeah, we do that all the time. Do you ever leave a meeting and pull someone aside and say, "Hey, can you believe so and so said that about me?" Or, "That's the dumbest idea. I can't believe that." We call that the meeting after the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And right there, uh, um, you're just causing so much dysfunction because they go back to their departments and they complain about the leadership team meeting, and there's your culture, even though
Mm-hmm.
they've got their mission and vision up on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we really focus on developing the values, and we go off site with this, and it's like we're locked in a room. We're picking our core values. We start with 100 and we get it down to three.
Yeah.
And in that process, the leaders have, when you get down to three or maybe four, then that's when you start finding out what leaders really mean by the word commitment or integrity or respect. Okay, what do you really mean about that? And what's happening in the organization right now that's causing you to pick that value? And so we end up with three or four values, and it's okay now the hard work is you've got to model that. You have to live that. You have to walk that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we start the journey of creating the type of culture that we want.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and the importance of uh, communicating that throughout the organization and how much work it takes to communicate. We have many clients that the leadership team will say, "Oh yeah, we think we're doing really well, and we make really good decisions." And then when we leave our meeting, we don't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, when Ali and I work with leadership teams, everybody from the receptionist to the admin to every position in that company needs to be able to recite the clarity statement: who we are, why we exist, how we're different, where we're going, and how we behave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we can start implementing culture. And that process takes about 12 to 18 months
Wow.
to really
Yeah.
embed a culture uh, into an organization. And again, it cannot, it just will not work unless the leader, whether it's a CEO or the owner or an executive director, the top person has to be the voice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, oftentimes they'll delegate the administrative part of many of these initiatives to HR,
Right.
and that's fine. But the voice has to be from the ultimate leader because everyone has to see, okay, this is real.
Yeah. Is there a magic number or a cap at how many core values a company should have? Just out of
For
curiosity.
us, there
I've
is,
seen a lot
for
that
us, yeah, for us, there is a magic number.
yeah.
And it's because we've seen so many organizations that have a, a lot of values, and it's just all diluted. Nobody can recite them. Nobody knows what it means. And
Yeah.
so it's for us, it's three values, maybe four,
Okay.
never more than four.
Okay.
And it's this is how we behave. This is how we hold ourselves accountable. This is how we interact with the community. This is how we engage with our clients. This is how we engage with each other. And uh, we work with our clients to really communicate that through the organization. So some leadership teams tend to have more introverts on it than
Mm-hmm.
extroverts.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem when you're trying to communicate consistently.
Mm.
So Ali and I will work with those teams and we'll do the communicating for them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll attend company meetings. We'll talk about their clarity statement. We'll talk about why it's so important. And the leadership team will be there backing it up, saying, yeah, this is where we want to go. Now, other leadership teams and leaders are maybe they're more extroverted and they prefer extroversion and they're very comfortable talking
Mm-hmm.
in front of their organizations. Well, then
Mm-hmm.
we coach them on how to deliver the message. But
Yeah.
it's not unusual to have leadership teams that are reluctant to stand in front of their companies and talk.
Yeah. No, for
So
sure.
we coach them on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely had a few socially awkward CEOs in my past. So
Yeah, right.
yeah.
You know,
And
they
it's
have a
it
great
makes I
vision.
mean, that's they were the brains behind the idea, the concept, the service, the product. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily know how to guide a team. I totally makes sense. Is there any like small quick tips that people can start to think about when they're trying to whittle down that big list of core values? Some
Yeah, it's interesting because I wouldn't say there's quick tips, but they have to be values that you truly believe in and model and not aspirational.
Mhm.
They have to be
Like you're
how you
already
are
doing it.
today.
It's already happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Got it.
maybe a year from now, we can revisit your values, and sometimes we tweak them because
Got
they've
it.
mastered those values and now they
Yeah.
want to move on to a few others. But they have to be real. They can't be aspirational. We had a client once, leadership team, all white men,
Hmm.
okay, on the executive team.
Hmm.
And they were adamant that they wanted one of their values to be inclusivity. And we're like, no, no, you're about as far from inclusivity as you can get. Uh,
Right.
and we had to explain to them why, okay, that's an aspirational value, and we can work on that over
Right.
time to uh, improve it, right? And
Hmm.
get more diversity on the leadership team. And that's, you know, how hard that is. That takes time.
Hmm.
But for today, that's not you. So you can't model that. You can't live it. You can't walk it. Uh, and nobody's going to believe you. So
Yeah.
that's not a value. So it has to be values that you truly are passionate about, truly want to be guided by,
Hmm.
truly want to be guided by. So we have organizations, for example, that we have a number of clients in the construction industry. Okay. Well, a lot of shame and blame and judgment in the construction business, a lot of foul language, putting people down,
Mm.
insulting, you know, a lot of that happens in the field. And we
Right.
have a client that has spent the last 3 years working to change that culture because they had that culture.
Yeah.
And so, you know, commitment, respect, integrity were really important to them.
Hmm.
And we would say, this is what we mean when we talk about integrity. It's how we talk to each other, how we treat each other, you know, around commitment. We're committed to helping you grow as a person, not
Yeah.
just professionally, but as an individual. And this is what it means. And we don't talk to each other like this. And so it's the values that you have to be able to reinforce and live.
Hmm.
So those aren't really quick tips, but uh, you can't you can't lie to yourself. You
Right.
can't be aspirational.
I like that. That's what you said there is just aspirational. That can't be the start of your core values. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get a little bit into feedback culture. I think that segues pretty well. It's obviously essential for growth. How do you instill a culture of constructive feedback with your teams?
Yeah, uh, that uh, that takes time. Okay. And it takes a group of individuals that are okay with learning how to become more vulnerable.
Hmm.
You know, it's just you don't grow up in the business world that we've grown up in the last 20, 30 years where you hid your weaknesses.
Hmm.
You know, you did not talk about what you could and couldn't do in front of your peers
Hmm.
because that would actually be a sign of weakness.
Right.
And we're flipping that on its
Yeah.
head.
Hmm.
We're absolutely flipping it on its head. And now the most effective leaders, and research just continues to show this now, are the leaders that are most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so when we can start being vulnerable with each other and creating that safe environment, right? Safe environment where we've done the work to build trust as a leadership team because you can't be vulnerable without trust. Then
Hmm.
we learn to say the things that we need to say to each other to help each other. All right. People think of feedback as negative.
Hmm.
Okay. Aaliyah and I really drill into our clients. No, feedback is a gift. I care about you enough, Fallon, that I'm going to give you this feedback.
Hmm.
And I understand that it might sting a little, so I'm going to work on my delivery of it.
Right.
But it's because I care about you enough and I know that you want to be the best host you can be. So I'm going to give you this feedback. Okay.
Hmm.
When we can get to a point where we can give each other feedback like that, then we're cooking with fire, right? Because then we are not wasting time on silos and politics and agenda, and we're just moving the business along quickly.
Hmm.
That takes time. It takes time. It starts with vulnerability. Well, it starts with trust, then vulnerability, be able to admit our weaknesses and our faults. And then a big part of this, Fallon, is emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's a big topic today, just like culture is. But emotional intelligence is really important in building cohesive teams and building healthy cultures because at its core, emotional intelligence is simply how do our words, actions, and behaviors impact the people around us,
Hmm.
right? And so the ability to read a room. the ability, if you're interviewing me right now and you can tell I'm going way off track, you can read that, you're going to pull me back in. You can see I'm going off the rails, right? Some people don't have that skill, and they don't have the self-awareness skill. And so
Mhm.
if you can't read other people and you can't even read yourself, you're going to have a hard time trusting and being vulnerable. So we kind of work on that at the same time.
Mhm.
And in doing so, then we start practicing how to give each other feedback. We start with really simple stuff.
Mhm.
Where did I grow up? How many siblings do I have? What was my biggest challenge as a child? And just really simple stuff. And then we start practicing uh, with our clients, and we facilitate it and help them. And we go around and get them to start giving each other feedback in the setting of, okay, here's one thing, Fallon, that is so important to our organization. You have to do more of. And here's one thing I believe you need to stop right now
Mhm.
because it's harming the team and the organization. It's not helpful.
Mhm.
Okay. That's when you go around the executive team and you start doing that on a regular, the first few times, it's really scary for people, especially ones that aren't open to being vulnerable right away. But if you do that once a week, once a month for a year, teams just start giving each other feedback in real time. It's a
Mhm.
gift. I want to give this to you right now. The sooner I can give it to you, the sooner you'll benefit from it. And you'll treat it as a gift, even though it may really sting,
Right.
because I care about you. I care about your success. I care about the team, and I care about the organization. That's why I'm giving you this feedback. So we have to change the framework of feedback from being a negative thing, like you're doing this wrong and I'm going to point it out to you, to, hey, here's something that I think will really help you move farther along your professional path because I know that's what you want.
Mhm.
So that feedback loop is absolutely critical. But people weren't raised that way, right? We learned feedback
Yeah.
on the school ground,
Yeah.
how we got teased, or close friends. Were we in a loving, nurturing environment at home, where it was safe to talk about difficult subjects? Or were you raised in a family like you don't talk to your spoken to, you don't bring up anything difficult, and everything is shame and blame?
Mhm.
And so we have to help individuals really overcome that. It's prevalent, actually,
Mhm.
in most of the leadership teams we engage with. So that's why I say this takes 12 to 18 months,
Yeah.
because you don't just flip a switch and say, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
give me all the feedback you want. It's like, no, it's going to crush me if
Yeah.
I'm not ready for
So, okay, so transparency obviously is a key to building trust. How do you strike the right balance between transparency and discretion?
it. Yeah, and that starts at the CEO or the owners. It starts with them.
Hmm.
If they're not transparent, nobody's going to be transparent. And
Yeah.
we've seen clients where the leader thinks they want a certain type of culture and thinks they're vulnerable and thinks they're transparent, but we watch them get feedback and they have a physical or emotional reaction to it.
Hmm.
That's not good. Okay, well, that just sends a message to everyone around the table in the organization. Okay, we're not going to be honest with each other.
Hmm.
All right, so it starts at the top. The leader has to be transparent. The leader has to be able to say, yeah, I really messed that up. I made that decision and it is on me.
Hmm.
Uh, or I, we need to do this and I'm not good at it. And
Hmm.
actually, Sally over here on the executive team, she's much better at that.
Yeah.
I'd rather have her lead that initiative, and I'll learn from her on
Yeah.
it. Or the ability to say, hey, I have some issues at home right now, family matters that are really weighing on me, and I'm not at my best right now, and I would appreciate your support. So when a leader can start being that transparent, then the leadership team can be, and then the people that report to them can see that, and they can be more transparent. And so that plays into, again, the trust, the vulnerability, being able to give and receive feedback. Uh, and the other thing around feedback, Fallon, that is so important, and Ali and I spend time coaching and teaching our clients on this, is really active listening.
Hmm.
It's amazing how many people are waiting to speak, and they're not. actually listening to what the person is saying.
Right.
And they couldn't repeat back what the person said because they're waiting to push their agenda forward or give their thoughts. So we help in that area too, this concept of really active listening, really
Hmm.
hearing the other person, really empathizing with them and putting yourself in their position, even if you disagree with them.
Yeah. How do you prioritize and enhance the overall employee experience in organizations?
Yeah. Well, you're asking all the really powerful questions in building a healthy culture.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we start at the top with, because we have leaders that uh, just naturally don't really care about other people.
Mhm.
It's not good or bad. It's just that they're focused on results. They're focused on marketing and finance and operations and strategy, and they're not really focused on people. Well,
Mhm.
leadership is people. That's the core of leadership. It's people. And
Mhm.
if you can't engage with people, it's going to influence negatively your ability to lead them. And so
Mhm.
when we talk about employee engagement, it's all about and employee satisfaction, it's all about how engaged they feel in their organization. Do they feel like their supervisor and the people above them actually know them?
Mhm.
Okay. Do they know that I just put my dog down? Do they know that I'm going through a divorce? Do they know that we're expecting our third child and we're having trouble making ends meet? Do they care about me?
Mhm.
That's something that's absolutely critical that leaders have to take time to invest in the people in the organization so that they know they care about them. And then the other really important thing is, do I feel like my job matters? Am
Mhm.
I being communicated to? Am I being told? Am I being shown that the work that I'm doing matters to other people? Or do I just come to work every day, punch the clock, grind out my work and go home, and I don't even know how it impacts anyone else? Okay,
Mhm.
that's really important to employee engagement and satisfaction. Uh, I once led a company. We had almost 400 people, so we had a number of leaders, supervisors in it, managers, and I was talking to one of them one day, and I was sharing with her what I had learned about some of the people that reported to her, and she kind of got a little bit perturbed. She says, "Well, how do you know all that about the people that report to me?"
Mhm.
Because she didn't, and I said, "Well, because I asked them. When I'm walking down the hall or seeing them somewhere,
Right.
let them know I care." And that's probably the most powerful thing in employee engagement. And
Yeah.
we had a client, very well-meaning, very introverted, a wonderful leader, very caring, but just really struggled with going out into the field and learning, asking questions about his staff. And
Mhm.
so we've really worked with him on that. And while it's uncomfortable for him, he sees the importance of it and he's vulnerable. It's like, hey, I'm not good at this, but I do care and I want to learn about you.
Right.
That company has just grown exponentially because of that. So it's really about, they say people don't leave their jobs, they leave their supervisor. And
Mhm.
we see that happen all the time.
Mhm. I feel like employee engagement has come up in every conversation I've had so far, and I've learned a lot of really cool different ways that companies or leaders can recognize their employees. Is there any tactics that you've seen be very successful?
Well, first and foremost, it's in the moment. It's day in and day out. So when we talk about that clarity statement around how we're different
Hmm.
and why we exist and how we're different, that is so crucial to employee engagement because we're able to tie what a person does. It's like, hey, Joan, I really appreciate what you're doing right now. This role that you're in really helps us differentiate ourselves from our
Hmm.
competition. And let me give you some examples of what you've just done and how it's impacted the organization or our clients, you
Hmm.
know, or in one of our values, hey, Emily, I just observed you uh, really modeling our value. And I just want to compliment you for it. And here's how it is impacting us. And
Hmm.
thank you for that. When we catch people doing things right, that's how we really strengthen that employee engagement. And it's not a quarterly, oh, let's have a barbecue, or hey, everybody, stay late and we'll buy pizza for you and
Right.
celebrate. It's like, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
People want to feel like they're being uh, recognized and rewarded. And then when you have a quarterly function where you're giving away really cool stuff, it really means something.
Hmm.
Uh, but when you absent all that employee one-on-one and interest and investment in them, and you just have a quarterly or semi-annual meeting, people don't care.
Hmm.
And so it's that real time catching people doing the right things and recognizing it and rewarding that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've
Now, the
talked.
other thing, the
Oh, go
other
ahead.
thing we
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
Farron, with our clients around the same area is we've encouraged all of our clients to stop annual reviews.
Ah.
Do not do annual reviews.
And is that because you should
Do
be waiting a year to be
right.
covering this
Yeah.
information?
You did something 8 months ago that I want to tell you is not right.
Right. Right.
Because of that, you're getting a less raise. Well, why didn't you tell me that 8 months ago and I could have fixed it,
Right.
right?
Right.
So those are kind of going by the wayside. What we encourage our clients to do is either monthly or
Hmm.
quarterly stay interviews,
Hmm.
not exit interviews, stay interviews.
Hmm.
How's there when you were driving to work today, what were you thinking? What was going through your mind about work? When was the last time you thought about leaving? What would have to happen here for you to want to leave your job?
Hmm.
Things like that in real time. Okay, well, let's work on that. Let's fix that. What's not happening here where you feel we're not investing in your professional or personal development? What could we be doing different? When we're talking to people real time, monthly or quarterly about that, they don't leave
Hmm.
because, as you know, people need their personal why met.
Hmm.
Right. We spend time understanding, coaching our leaders to understand what's the personal why. Why is that person here? They could be anywhere. Why are
Hmm.
they here? When we
Hmm.
know their why, then we can start focusing on that. And
Hmm.
when I walk up to you in the hallway, I can ask you, hey, how's it going in meeting your why?
Hmm.
That is so powerful than uh, people leaving and say, and then telling the organization, well, I'm leaving because you don't do this for me. Oh,
Hmm.
why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked or showed you cared. So
Right.
it's that changing how we communicate with our staff and employees and in real time.
Yeah.
And that really has influenced our ability to our clients' abilities to retain talent.
Yeah. I love that. I think like that was actually the last company I worked for before going completely independent was really great about that. Like there was no surprises. It was you were praised. I remember going in with my speech ready on why I deserve X amount raise and didn't even have to have that conversation. One thing I did like that they did though is they did those 360 reviews, which I think is really effective. Do you have any thoughts on 360
Yeah.
reviews?
Yeah, and we help our clients with 360 reviews.
Okay.
What uh, and we've done that, and it is really important, right? But again, the more trust there is within the organization, the
Mhm.
more vulnerability, the more transparency, the more meaningful those 360 reviews actually are,
Got it.
right? And I think you've seen them, I've seen them where, oh, it's time for me to really say everything I hate about that person, and no one
Right.
has to know it was me, right?
Right.
Those are useless. So what we try and do with our clients, Fallon, is we try and shift away from 360s and building this culture where we're actually allowing time, specific time, to give each other feedback face to face.
Hmm.
I trust you enough. I don't need a blind survey. I
Yeah.
trust you enough, and I know you care about me enough. You're just going to tell me what you think. When we're at that level, we have a culture of trust, vulnerability, and transparency.
Hmm.
Okay. So that takes a long time to build that, right? But we
Yeah.
try and shift to where we're actually saying things to each other
Hmm.
rather than blind surveys.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. So we've talked about a lot of things from trust, transparency, feedback, values. Where should people start? Where should when one is trying to look at improving or growing their organization, would you say there's one place to start?
Well, first and foremost, it's self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
There's so
Right.
much communication and talking points about culture in social media today, right? So much. But for a business owner or executive to actually say, yeah, I want to be vulnerable enough to actually do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gap between all the talk around culture and the leader that actually says, I'm willing to do what I need to do to
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah.
And so the first step is self-awareness. The first step is self-awareness and being vulnerable and transparent enough to say, I need help because I'm not building the culture that I really want,
Mm-hmm.
and I need help in doing that. That's the first step.
Yeah. That makes total sense. All right, I have one question that I want to ask, a little bit of a curveball, but because I have a video background and I work with companies, is in today's digital age, video communication obviously plays a significant role in connecting and communicating. Have you seen video used in any interesting ways, or have you implemented video in any ways?
Uh, I have not. I have not, but I do see the value in it, especially with remote workers,
Mm-hmm.
and really communicating a consistent message
Yeah.
that doesn't get diluted,
Yeah.
through the telephone game.
Yeah.
And so video plays a big role in that. I think it plays a big role in social media in attracting the type of clients that you want. And I've
And
seen some of yours
employees too.
and
Yeah.
do a really good job on that. And
Yeah.
so I think it's part of the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely part of the future.
Awesome. Well, this has just been a wealth of information. And if anyone wants to learn more about the executive guide or get in touch with you, where should they go?
Theexecutiveguide.net. That's our
Perfect.
website. And or they can reach me at mike@theexecutiveguide.net.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very
Awesome.
much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And thanks for your interest and commitment to leadership and culture.
Yes.